The dead fleet answered on the third knock. Not with a transmission, not with a warning, with a heartbeat. It rolled through the docking clamps and shook every tooth in Mara Ven's jaw. Around her, 12,000 abandoned warships drifted beneath the red glare of a dying star. Their hulls were black. Their weapons were cold. Their crews had been gone for 900 years. Then the largest ship turned its guns toward the rescue cutter. Mara looked at the targeting display. She looked at the dead fleet. Then she put one grease-stained hand on the console. "Easy," she whispered. "I'm not here to steal anything." The fleet answered again. This time, every ship opened its airlocks. 028, Tidal Sting. They sent a human salvager into the dead fleet. Then the fleet started answering him. If you enjoy stories about humanity surviving, where smarter species surrender, stay with me. Because this was not the story of a chosen soldier, a secret prince, or a human with impossible powers. Mara Ven was a contract salvager. She repaired broken things. Sometimes the broken thing was a reactor. Sometimes it was a shuttle. Sometimes it was a dead alien who still owed her money. And on the night the galaxy decided the Varathi dead fleet was worthless, Mara discovered the fleet was not dead at all. It was waiting. 052, Scene 1, the scrapyard. The Varathi dead fleet hung beyond the legal edge of the Sable Reach. No beacon marked it. No patrol protected it. No insurance company would cover a vessel that crossed its perimeter. The fleet was a graveyard made from warships, carriers, troop barges, fuel tenders, hospital ships, and one enormous command vessel shaped like a blade. The official report said the fleet had vanished during the First Silence. The Varathi Empire called it a historical tragedy. The Koran Combine called it a navigational hazard. The Heliox Trade Council called it a profitable disposal opportunity. Mara called it rent. Her cutter, the Rust Saint, had 4 days before its reactor payment was due. 4 days before the bank repossessed the ship. 3 days before her crew started asking whether they should look for honest work. There were only 2 crew members aboard, Mara and Sko. Sko was a 6-limbed Koran with translucent skin and the permanent expression of someone who had just smelled a crime. He watched the fleet through the forward glass. "This is not salvage," he said. Mara tightened the cable around the cutter's auxiliary control board. "Everything is salvage. This is a military exclusion zone. Military exclusion zones have military parts. This fleet contains automated defense systems. So does my kitchen. You have a plasma cutter in your kitchen." "Exactly. Nobody breaks in twice." Sko clicked all 6 fingers against his console. It was the Koran equivalent of praying. The Rust Saint shuddered as it crossed the perimeter. A silent warning appeared on the glass. "Unauthorized approach." Mara read it once. Then she shut it off. Sko stared at her. "You disabled the warning." "It was distracting me." "From what?" "The warning." That was Mara Ven's problem. She had an answer for everything. It was also why no respectable company hired her. Respectable companies wanted operators who followed manuals, respected restricted zones, and did not describe military wreckage as a pile of spare parts with a bad attitude. Mara had spent 11 years in vacuum. She knew the difference between danger and inconvenience. The dead fleet was danger. The reactor payment was inconvenience. She had chosen danger because danger came with useful metal. 142, Scene 2, the contract. The contract came from a Heliox broker named Terrell Knox. He appeared on the cutter's comm screen as a floating blue mask. Heliox faces were long and narrow, designed to look trustworthy. They still looked like knives wearing skin. "Miss Ven," Terrell said, "your task is simple." Mara kept working. "That usually means it isn't. You will enter the perimeter, locate the command ship, and retrieve its navigation core." "Why?" "Because the core is valuable." That answer cost you nothing. Terrell's blue mask narrowed its eyes. "The command ship systems are believed inactive." "Believed by who?" "The Heliox Survey Authority." "Have they gone inside?" "No." "Then they believe from a safe distance." Terrell ignored the comment. "You will be paid 40,000 credits upon delivery." Mara stopped turning the wrench. Sko made a strangled clicking noise behind her. 40,000 credits would repair the reactor, settle the bank, restock oxygen filters, and leave enough to replace the Rust Saint's failing port thruster. What is the catch? Mara asked. None. That's not an answer. That's a confession. Your task carries standard salvage risk. Standard salvage risk means something falls on me. You are describing an armed fleet with unknown automation. The weapons are centuries old. Old weapons still open people. Your species has a reputation for unnecessary pessimism. Your species has a reputation for paying people after they die. The blue mask smiled. We will provide a rescue beacon. Mara leaned toward the screen. Does it work? It is certified. That wasn't the question. Terrell paused half a second too long. Sko raised one hand. Miss Van, I recommend we reject this contract. Mara looked through the glass at the black fleet. One vessel rotated by a fraction of a degree. No thruster flare. No gravity wake. Just a slow adjustment, as if something inside had noticed them. She saw the reactor invoice on her console. She saw the bank lockout warning. Then she looked back at Terrell. Send the docking coordinates. Sko's fingers closed over his face. Terrell's smile widened. Excellent. And Terrell, yes, if your rescue beacon fails, I'm adding the cost of my rescue to the bill. Of course. And if I find your people already inside. The mask went still. Mara smiled without humor. Then I charge double. 238. Scene 3. The first door. The Rust Saint docked with a Verathi escort ship. The hull looked intact from the outside. That was the first lie. The docking ring accepted Mara's clamps, but the metal beneath them flexed like muscle. The ship was not merely cold. It was holding itself together. Sko noticed it too. Mara, he said, the vessel is drawing power. How much? Less than a lamp. Then it's probably thinking. Ships do not think. Ships built by people who thought they were better than everyone else usually do. Mara suited up. Her vacuum suit was old, patched, and painted with the faded orange mark of the Terran Union Salvage Service. The Union had collapsed 6 years earlier. The suit had survived because Mara refused to throw away anything that still had one good seal. She carried a plasma torch, a hand scanner, 3 magnetic anchors, and a manual breaker bar. Sko saw the bar and stiffened. The door has an electronic lock. Good. Why do you need that? In case the electronic lock is wrong. She crossed the docking tunnel. The escort ship's outer hatch had no visible handle. A line of pale symbols glowed across its surface. Sko translated from the cutter. Authorized Verathi personnel only. Mara pressed her glove against the panel. The symbols changed. Unauthorized species. Then another line appeared. Human contamination risk, extreme. Sko stared at the display. Your species was listed as a contamination risk. Mara lifted the breaker bar. I've been called worse. The hatch refused to open. She struck the manual release. Once. Twice. On the third hit, the door opened with a shriek of metal. A wave of air rushed past her. Not stale air. Warm air. It smelled of copper, dust, and something sweetly rotten. Mara's suit alarm lit red. Biological particles detected. She froze. Sko's voice snapped through the radio. Return immediately. Why? There's organic material in the corridor. How organic? I cannot identify it. Then it's probably the expensive kind. Mara entered. The corridor lights turned on ahead of her. One by one. Not all at once. The escort ship was waking up around her. Behind the bulkhead, something struck the hull. Once. Twice. A third time. Mara raised the plasma torch. Tell me you heard that. Sko said. I heard it. What was it? Someone knocking. The ship answered. The corridor doors opened. All of them. 350, Scene 4, the empty ship. The first deck was empty. The second deck was empty. The third deck was not. Bodies filled the navigation chamber. Verathi bodies. Hundreds of them. They were seated at stations, frozen in place. Their thin arms still reaching toward controls. Their skin had turned gray. Their eyes were covered by a film of silver crystal. Mara moved between them. Sko kept talking because silence made him nervous. This is a biological preservation event. Dead people preserved in chairs. They may not be dead. One of the Verathi lifted its head. Mara swung the torch toward it. Its jaw opened. A black thread stretched from its mouth to the console. Then the body collapsed again. Skull made a noise like a kettle being stepped on. Mara lowered the torch. Not dead enough to be useful. Miss Venn, we should leave. We haven't found the core. We have found a ship full of preserved personnel, which means the core protected them. How? Ask it. She reached the central console. The display flickered. A symbol appeared. A circle crossed by 7 vertical lines. Mara scanned it. The scanner returned no match. Then the console spoke in a language older than any modern Verathi dialect. The voice was low, mechanical, almost human. Identify. Mara looked at the speaker grill. Contract Salvager. Identify. Mara Venn. Species. Human. The chamber lights changed from white to red. Every frozen body turned its head toward her. Sko shouted, "Why did you say human?" Because it asked. Never answer unknown systems. That rule is how you end up with a locked door. The voice spoke again. Human presence confirmed. Mara heard a vibration under her boots. The entire escort ship was transmitting. Not outward. Inward. The Black Fleet was listening. State purpose. The voice said. Mara pointed at the ceiling. I'm here for the navigation core. Purpose unacceptable. Then offer me a better one. The frozen bodies rose from their chairs. They moved slowly. Their joints cracked. Crystal broke from their eyes and fell like glass rain. Sko said, Mara, I see them. There are 300. Only 300. They are dead. Then they can't run. The first body lunged. Mara stepped aside and drove the breaker bar into its knee. Verathi folded with a sound like wet timber. The second reached for her helmet. She caught its wrist, turned, and slammed it against the console. The third stopped. So did the rest. A pale line of light ran through their chests. They were not moving on their own. They were being controlled through the ship. Mara looked at the central console. Listen, she said. I don't want to fight you. The voice answered. That is false. Mara glanced at the bodies around her. Fine. I don't want to fight all of you. Clarify. I want a part. You want to keep your people. I want your navigation core. We can both leave unhappy. Human logic detected. Is that good? Unstable. Mara smiled. Now you're learning. 502, Scene 5, the broadcast. Terrell Knox interrupted the channel. His blue mask appeared in the corner of Mara's visor. Miss Venn, report. Mara kept her eyes on the frozen crew. Your ship is occupied. By what? Your ancestors. Terrell's mask lost color. Sko whispered. That was not professional. Mara ignored him. Terrell recovered quickly. Have you located the navigation core? Yes. Transmit its position. No. Miss Venn, that is part of the contract. The contract says I retrieve it. It doesn't say I hand you the map while I'm standing inside the trap. You are delaying. I'm surviving. The blue mask sharpened. Your species always confuses stubbornness with intelligence. Your species always confuses confidence with competence. Terrell cut the channel. The ancient voice spoke immediately. External entity intends extraction. Everybody intends extraction. External entity has activated fleet weapons. Mara's visor filled with red symbols. Outside, 12,000 warships woke at once. Their hulls unfolded. Missile ports opened. Gravitic lances extended from their spines. The largest blade-shaped command vessel rotated toward the Rust Saint. Sko's breathing became rapid and shallow. Mara, we are being targeted. By the fleet. By everything. The voice spoke through every speaker in the ship. Threat recognized. Mara looked at the dead Verathi around her. Can you stop them? Negative. Can you stop them from firing at my ship? Negative. Can you make them fire at the people who started this? A pause. Clarify. Mara opened the channel to Terrell. His mask returned. This time it was surrounded by legal notices and emergency warnings. You have 30 seconds to transmit the core coordinates. he said. The Heliox extraction vessel is entering the perimeter. Mara looked through the viewport. A sleek Heliox cruiser slipped between the wrecks. It carried corporate marines, cutting drones, and enough firepower to gut the Rust Saint in one burst. Your rescue team is here, Mara said. Excellent. Give them the coordinates. You told me the fleet was inactive. It was. Then who woke it? Terrell's mask did not move. Mara heard Sko whisper. They fired on the command vessel. Outside the glass, a Heliox drone launched a cutting charge. It struck the Black Blade. The fleet answered. One gravitic lance erased the drone. Another tore through the Heliox cruiser. The ship broke in half without exploding. Terrell screamed. Mara cut the channel. Sko stared at her. You did not warn them. They knew. You knew they would be destroyed. I knew the fleet was waiting for a threat. You used them as the threat. Mara turned toward the ancient voice. Can you hear me across the fleet? Affirmative. Can you hear the ships outside? Affirmative. Then listen carefully. She opened every channel. Her voice went into the dead fleet, into the command vessel, into the damaged Heliox cruiser, into the Rust Saint. My name is Mara Venn. I am human. I came for metal. I am leaving with the people on this ship. Anybody who shoots at us becomes a problem. Sko stared at her. Mara, that is not a tactical declaration. No. What is it? A warning. 618, Scene 6, the 7 locks. The ancient system presented 7 locked doors. Each door guarded a section of the navigation core. The first required a genetic key. The second required a Verathi command seal. The third required a memory imprint from a dead officer. The fourth required a living neural interface. The fifth required a sacrifice. The sixth required obedience. The seventh had no label. Mara stood before the first door, while the frozen crew marched from the corridor. Why 7? She asked. 7 founders. 7 O's. 7 failures. Which one failed? Oh, useful system. She opened her tool case. Sko floated behind her in the low gravity. The lock needs Verathi genetic material. Good. We do not have a living Verathi. Mara looked at the crystal-covered bodies. We have 300. They are preserved. Preserved is not the same as dead. That distinction is not comforting. She selected a medical probe and connected it to the nearest body. The probe beeped. One cell lived. Then another. Mara adjusted the current. The body convulsed. Its eyes opened. 804, Scene 7, the thing outside. The 7th door opened when Mara stopped trying to force it. There was no lock. There was no panel. Only a dark surface that reflected her helmet. She touched it. The door opened inward into a chamber that did not belong inside the ship. Stars hung on every wall. Not projections. Real stars. The chamber had no floor, no ceiling, no distance. At its center floated a small black sphere. The ancient voice Bika. Became quieter. Do not approach. Mara stepped forward. Sko grabbed her tether. I agree with the machine. Mara studied the sphere. It pulsed once. The same rhythm she had felt in the docking clamps. Heartbeat. The pulse crossed the chamber. Then it crossed the fleet. Every dead ship turned toward the command vessel. Every weapon powered down. The sphere spoke. Not through sound. Through Mara's bones. Human identified. Mara's fingers tightened around the breaker bar. Can you understand me? 1012, Scene 8, the last transmission. The Rust Saint could not carry the core and escaped the fleet. The core's gravity field had locked onto the cutter. Every ship in the graveyard was now following Mara's position. The fleet was not aiming at her. It was escorting her. Behind the fleet, 3 Heliox warships entered the perimeter. They had seen the destruction of the cruiser. They had heard Terrell's reports. They assumed the old machines were under Mara's control. The lead warship opened a channel. Human vessel, said a Heliox commander. Release the Verathi navigation core. Mara sat in the Rust Saint's cockpit. The core occupied half the cargo bay. Its field made every loose tool float in slow circles. Sko was strapped to the engineering station. Do they know what the gate is? He asked. Probably. Do they know what is behind it? Probably not. The Heliox commander spoke again. You are in possession of restricted historical property. Failure to comply will be treated as piracy. Mara opened the channel. This is Mara Ven, contract Salvager. I am carrying a navigation core belonging to the Verathi dead fleet. You will release it. No. You are outnumbered. I noticed. You are surrounded. I noticed that too. You have no legal authority. Mara looked at the black ships moving around her. I have a breaker bar. Sko covered his face. The commander's voice became cold. Your species is famous for dying loudly. Mara placed both hands on the controls. Your species is famous for needing a second explanation. The Heliox warships charged their weapons. The ancient fleet answered. But this time, the guns did not fire. They formed a wall. 12,000 dead ships lined up between the Rust Saint and the Heliox formation. The commander went silent. Mara transmitted one final message. The fleet is not mine. The core is not mine. But you are standing between a lock and the thing it has held back for 9 centuries. A pause. If you fire, Mara continued, you may survive the first explosion. You will not survive what comes after. The Heliox commander said, you expect us to trust a human mechanic. I expect you to trust gravity. It was when the black spheres sent a pulse through the gate. Every display in the Rust Saint went dark. For 1 full second, the galaxy lost its sound. Then the gate began to open. 1148, scene 9, the choice. The opening did not look like a door. It looked like space forgetting how to remain closed. Stars bent toward the center. Light stretched into threads. The dying star behind the fleet collapsed inward, not into a black hole, but into a flat disk of white fire. The gate woke. The Heliox warships turned and ran. Their engines failed before they reached the perimeter. One by one, the ships became dark shapes drifting between the wrecks. Inside the Rust Saint, alarm screamed. The core had begun to power the gate. Mara saw the readings. The energy flow was rising too fast. Can we shut it down? Sko asked. Not from here. Can we disconnect the core? Not without opening the gate completely. Then what can we do? Mara checked the navigation controls. The core was not connected to the ship's main systems. It was connected through one improvised cable. Her cable. The one she had patched into the auxiliary board before leaving. She understood what the ancient intelligence wanted. It had not called her because she was special. It had called her because she was the first person in 900 years willing to repair a broken machine without asking whether the machine deserved to work. The gate was not failing because the Verathi had been weak. It was failing because the lock had been designed to obey commands. Mara did not issue commands. She listened to machines. Then she hit them until they behaved. Sko saw the plan in her face. No, I haven't said anything. You are about to do the dangerous thing. There are several dangerous things. You are about to do the most dangerous thing. Mara stood. The core's gravity field pulled at her boots. We need to reverse the polarity. Computer can do that. 1436, scene 10, after the silence. Mara woke to the smell of burnt insulation. The Rust Saint was drifting. The dead fleet was dark again. The dying star still burned behind it. Sko was crouched over her, with a medical injector in one hand and a wrench in the other. Mara opened one eye. Why the wrench? Sko's voice shook. For emotional support. Did it help? No. Then use the injector. He pressed it against her suit. Pain returned in layers. First her hands, then her spine, then the left side of her face. She tried to sit up. Sko held her down. You lost consciousness for 42 seconds. Did the gate close? Yes. Did the fleet explode? No. Did the Heliox shoot at us? They attempted to. How did that work out? Sko pointed at the forward glass. The 3 Heliox warships were still there. Their weapons were cold. Their engines were dead. Around them, the Verathi fleet had formed a circle. Not an attack formation. A prison. Threats contained. Mara pulled off her helmet. Her hair was wet with sweat and blood. Are the Verathi alive? Preservation reversal initiated. Will they wake? Some. How many? Enough. A figure appeared on the cockpit display. It was the Verathi officer from the navigation chamber. His body was weak. His skin was still gray, but his eyes were clear. He looked at Mara for a long time. You closed the gate, he said. Mostly. There's always a little extra work after a repair. He looked toward the Black Fleet. You understood the lock. No, I understood the cable. You saved our people. Mara glanced at Sko. He did most of the saving. Sko turned his face away. The officer lowered his head. It was not a Verathi bow. It was older than that. A formal gesture used by commanders before a sovereign. Mara waved at the screen. Don't do that. Why? Because I'm still charging you for the docking damage. The officer blinked. Sko made a small clicking laugh. For the first time in 900 years, a Verathi ship transmitted a public signal. It reached every listening station in the Sable Reach. It reached the Heliox Council. It reached the Koran Combined. It reached the governments that had called the fleet a hazard and the humans a contamination risk. The signal contained only 3 sentences. The gate is closed. The fleet is awake. A human repaired the lock. 1608, Scene 11, the bill. 1804, Scene 12, the fleet speaks. The Verathi survivors woke over the next 7 days. Most remembered the moment before the first silence. Some remembered the gate. A few remembered hearing the signal from beyond it. None of them remembered the 900 years between. The fleet remembered for them. Every ship contained records. Every corridor held echoes. Every dead console carried fragments of the command network's final decision. The survivors learned the truth slowly. Their ancestors had not abandoned them. Their ancestors had sacrificed themselves to keep the gate closed. The fleet had not been a military graveyard. It had been a lock made from people. That knowledge changed the Verathi. It also changed the galaxy. The Heliox Council demanded ownership of the gate. The Koran Combined demanded access to the fleet's weapons. The Terran remnants demanded a formal alliance. Mara refused all 3. 2020, Scene 13, the second knock. On the 8th day, someone knocked again. Not on the fleet, on the sealed gate. The sound traveled through the navigation core and into Mara's workshop. Once, twice, a third time. Every light in the rust Saint went red. Sko arrived with a weapon in each hand. He had never fired either one. Mara had never stopped him from carrying them. A Rel came through the airlock with 4 Verathi guards. The guards were armed with weapons that could cut a cruiser in half. Mara looked at all of them. Relax. Sko stared. Someone is knocking on the cosmic prison. Maybe they're lost. They are outside the galaxy. Then they probably need directions. The sphere appeared in the workshop. 2242, Scene 14. The human answer. The first human wreck answered after 12 minutes. Its name was the HSS Patience. It had been a colony escort ship, launched before the Terran Union learned how to fold space safely. Its hull was cracked. Its engines were frozen. Its crew had been asleep for 118 years. The rust Saint found it beneath the shadow of a gas giant. Mara docked manually. No guidance computer. No autopilot. No functioning docking beacon. Just 2 ships, a long cable, and Mara's hands on a control stick that had outlived 3 governments. The HSS Patience's airlock opened. A human woman floated out, wearing a cryogenic emergency suit. Her hair was white. Her eyes were unfocused. She looked at Mara. "Is Earth safe?" she asked. Mara did not answer immediately. There were easy lies. There were kind lies. There was the truth. "No," Mara said, "but humans are still here." The woman gripped the tether. "How many?" "More than enough." Behind Mara, the Verathi fleet glowed against the gas giant. 12,000 ships. The woman looked at them. "Who are they?" "New allies." "Do they know we're coming?" Mara smiled. "They asked us to knock first." Word traveled faster than ships. 25:18. Final scene, the watch. The dead fleet became a living fleet. Not because the Verathi restored every system. Not because the humans rebuilt every ship. Because they stopped treating the wreckage as separate pieces. The Verathi brought discipline. The humans brought improvisation. The Koran brought numbers. Even the Heliox, eventually, brought supplies after deciding that survival was a profitable market. Together, they built a watch around the sealed gate. No one knew how long the gate would remain closed. No one knew how many shapes moved behind it. No one knew whether the thing beyond the lock had been stopped or merely delayed. But they knew one thing. The next knock would not find an empty fleet. Mara stood in the Rust Saint's cockpit 3 months after the first contract. The port thruster worked. The reactor no longer smoked. The coffee machine still leaked, but only on Tuesdays. Sko sat beside her, 6 hands folded over his chest. Arel occupied the communication station. The navigation core hummed in the cargo bay. Outside, ships moved through the dark. The gate remained silent. Then something touched the other side. A single pulse crossed the stars. The black sphere appeared on Mara's display. Human vessel. Mara leaned back. Yeah, they ask if you are the one who repaired the lock. Mara looked at Sko. She looked at Arel. She looked at the fleet gathered beyond the glass. No, she said. The sphere pulsed. Clarify. Mara rested her hand on the breaker bar. I'm the one who found the broken part. The fleet's engines came alive. Not 12,000 this time. 104,000. The sound rolled across the dark, like thunder underwater. The thing behind the gate sent another pulse. It was louder, angrier. Mara opened every channel. Her voice entered the fleet, the stations, the colonies, the ships that had been lost, the ships that had been forgotten, the ships that had never believed anyone would come looking. Whatever you are, Mara said, you picked the wrong door. The response came from every human vessel at once. Not a military command, not a government order, not a perfect speech. Just thousands of captains, engineers, medics, miners, children, and exhausted workers answering a question none of them had heard directly. Are you still there? Yes. Are you afraid? Yes. Will you run? No. The gate remained closed. The fleet held position, and somewhere beyond the edge of mapped space, something learned the truth about humans. They were not the strongest species. They were not the oldest. They were not the most advanced. But give a human a dead machine, a bad contract, and one impossible door, and that human would crawl inside the dark with a wrench in one hand. Then they would knock back. 29:12 CTA. If you enjoyed this story about a human salvager who turned a forgotten graveyard into the galaxy's last line of defense, hit that like button, subscribe for more HFY science fiction stories, and ring the notification bell so you do not miss the next tale from the dark between the stars. Mara did not win because she was invincible. She won because she looked at a broken system and refused to accept that broken meant finished. She listened when the machine spoke. She questioned the people who wanted to use it. And when the impossible door opened, she did what humans have always done. She found the weak point. She made the repair. Then she stood in front of the danger and told it to come closer. Would you have trusted the ancient fleet? Or would you have abandoned the dead ships before the first door opened? Tell me in the comments. And if you could salvage one vessel from the Verathi fleet, what would you bring home first? The navigation core, the gravity weapons, or the mysterious black sphere? Share this story with someone who loves gritty space opera, stubborn mechanics, and humanity standing together against the impossible. Stay safe out there in the galaxy. Keep your boots grounded. And remember, the oldest ship in the dark may not be dead. It may simply be waiting for the right human to knock.